All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA props video. It's going to be Flex Friday on PrizePicks, so hopefully I can set you guys up with a good Flex Friday slip. Let's go ahead and get into it, but first, as always, a quick recap from yesterday. So yesterday, a good day. I don't want to say it was expected, but kind of was after two lackluster days. That's kind of how it goes. This was kind of my favorite stack. Now, I personally ended up running out different variations from this one. We saw that these ones were all telling us one thing, like we had a correlated slip there via the 9-to-5 cheat sheet. And I personally like Kyle Lowry, but I also matched that in with other EV bets that we had throughout the day, whether it be the hockey props. Tyler Boyd under 4.5 reception was one that was popping up throughout the day as well. Also had Gus Edwards, NFL-wise, for under 11 rushing attempts. That was bittersweet that the Ravens decided not to kneel the football, especially on second down when there wasn't a timeout called. That was annoying. So a good day was had, but I do want to call out these two specifically as well. Gained another huge edge with the fantasy score props, specifically with these two. These were the two that I highlighted as my favorite NBA bets, and those ended up hitting. And I'm not going to lie, had those two not hit, I would have been on full tilt after, the last two nights where Jalen Suggs, his prop line got pulled because that was seemingly way too low of a fantasy score. And then he gets -1 point throughout the fourth quarter. And then Tyus Jones, where they end up pulling it as well because PrizePicks was vastly lower compared to both the sports books and Underdog. So yeah, I would have been on full tilt, but no, this ended up getting to 17 for Lonnie Walker, and then Jaime Jaquez got up to 20 for a fantasy score. But all in all, a good day, kind of expected after a poor night, kind of the previous night. And that's what's going to happen. I do want to point this out as well. Like, yes, this was extremely close. Very lucky to get that. And kind of with Mikal Bridges as well. But we know that that's exactly what props betting is. You need to have a little bit of luck there as well. There's going to be nights where you're unlucky. There's going to be nights where you're lucky. But that's where making the correct decisions night in and night out is going to reward you in the long term. Just one note, it is kind of funny as a content creator, if you will, how yesterday's video, the views were slightly down compared to normal, which I say this all the time, but after a day in which not desirable, let's put it that way, that's the day that the next day people should be coming in even more because it's a data thing. We know that you can't run too hot, and living at the 60% hit rate is awesome, but obviously there's going to be ups and downs to that. So it's a funny thing that I've noticed, and it is kind of, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but it is funny that it does seem to be when my views peak is probably the time not to watch because people come back, obviously, after a few good days in a row. Videos hit an all-time high, and no duh, there's going to be some sort of regression in there. And it's just the weirdest roller coaster for me as a content creator that I've noticed thus far this season. But yeah, looking at this slate, we got the starting out with the New York Knicks versus the Washington Wizards. A 7-point spread, okay, and we know not to really trust the Wizards. Interesting though, interesting spot I would say for some of these players. 227.5 is the average over and under for this game. Looking at the game, DeLon Wright is going to be out for the Washington Wizards. For the New York Knicks, we do need to get news on both Quentin Grimes and also RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett off the court does shift a lot of usage to Jalen Brunson. Given the matchup with Washington, that could be an edge that we gain. Quentin Grimes is just someone that does eat up minutes as well. If he is out, we can kind of accurately project some of the second string guys to get minutes. And if they're going to be giving us props, PrizePicks is on backups like Lonnie Walker and Jaime Jaquez. I've been begging for that, right? The Jaime Jaquez one specifically, that's going to lead us to easier props. And so we take a peek at the props that we're getting for the New York Knicks right now. Not that many good ones, which is kind of interesting to me. I do want to just take a peek at Jalen Brunson's points, rebounds, and assist prop right now at 34.5. It is basically a 50-50 split. We haven't projected to get 34 minutes in this game. And what I'm curious about is, are they reflecting RJ Barrett being on the court or off the court, right, given the projection? So I'm looking at the data with RJ Barrett off the court. We do know that Josh Hart benefits basically the most, but the usage rate for Jalen Brunson goes up 3.6% with RJ Barrett off the court at about a 30% usage rate. So extremely high. Averages 33.7 fantasy points per 36, which isn't that high. Doesn't see too much of an increase in production, but he does see an increase in both free throws attempted by 1.3 and also shot attempts by 2.8. So that just pretty much tells me that, in games where he's maybe RJ Barrett has sat, maybe they haven't been the best matchups, but it is encouraging that we can predict Jalen Brunson to be shooting the basketball a little bit more. Now, the per 36 numbers that we're getting do not really indicate that this is going to be a strong bet, so probably just passing up on it. I don't really know if we have actually any game stacks here, so right now, as it sits, without that RJ Barrett news, I'm probably going to pass up on this. I do just want to call out Josh Hart real quick, though. I would almost say Josh Hart is due for a bad game because he's played pretty well the last two games. He is someone that does get a pretty big bump, though, with RJ Barrett off the court. Averages 9.8 points, which is basically what he got last game. 8.5 rebounds, basically what he got last game. And 3.5 assists. We saw that number was a little bit higher last game. Does average 1 steal per 36 with him off the court as well. So pretty good matchup against Washington. This is a matchup I think, Josh Hart would be someone we'd probably want to look at. He averages 28 fantasy points per 36 with RJ Barrett off the court. Again, the minutes probably should be there for him if RJ Barrett is off the court. We go and take a peek at the Washington Wizards here. No real great props just yet for Washington. I don't know if we really want to go in on them too much. Maybe we'll get some fantasy score props at the end of this video or while I'm recording this video. I did do this video a little bit recorded because, well, my 3-month-old daughter fell asleep earlier than normal. So I was able to do it a little bit earlier. Thus, I don't know if we're going to get the fantasy score prop. And so for me, I'm probably just passing up on most of these right now. I don't love them. I do want to call out a comment that someone had on the last video. It's that they pretty much said, hey, I'm going to rock with you with a Jordan Poole under 24 points, rebounds, and assists, or I think it was 24.5. Yeah, it was under 24.5, which kind of luckily hit. But the reason I'm calling that out is because he's like, everyone else in the industry is saying bet the over. A lot of pro bettors are saying bet the over there. And I just want to bring that up because, like, sure, if I'm saying one thing and a bunch of people are saying the other thing, or the data is saying one thing and a bunch of people are saying the other thing, probably just a bet to stay away from. Like, we don't need to force those bets, especially in NBA, especially on a big slate like this where there's a lot of prop bets. I just want to call that out because, like, you should never feel like you're forced into prop. But yeah, that's kind of it for that game right now. Let's go ahead and get into the Bucks versus the Hornets. 7.5 point spread, but a pretty high scoring game at 238.5 or so. Looking at the injury report, we do need to get news on Giannis. I kind of expect him to play in this game, but Jay Crowder is going to be out, and then Marjon Beauchamp as well. He is out. Okay, so he was someone that was supposed to step up into a bigger role, and it looked like he had. And I don't really want to bring this up, but 2 nights ago, had Beauchamp probably finished the game, I probably had a chance at winning a GPP. That felt like a bad beat, but I did yesterday. I ended up having this one as a GPP winner, which was pretty fun. Shout out to Isaiah Joe for having a day. But yeah, that could create some minutes for a bunch of other players in this game. And then we look at Charlotte injury-wise. Terry Rozier still out. Gordon Hayward, a game-time decision, as is Brandon Miller. Let's take a peek at the injury report here for both teams. Giannis, truly a game-time decision. Right now, all those players are projected to play minus Terry Rozier. So I don't know if we're going to get that many props for this game because that does shift the whole dynamic of the game. Like, if Rozier's out, we're going to see LaMelo Ball gets a big bump in usage. And if Hayward's out, we're going to see PJ Washington forced into having a higher usage rate as well. If Giannis were out, I showed you guys the stack that I ran out with the Bucks last game or last slate. I think Lillard, Beasley, and Brook, especially in this matchup, all three of those guys would be appealing in terms of maybe a potential game stack. And so right now, again, smartly, and I kind of like that they do this, they are giving us some Giannis props and no one else. And the reason why they're doing that, obviously, is because Giannis is the one that's currently a game time decision. If he plays, his prop lines aren't going to change at all. Where if he plays or sits, everyone else's prop lines are going to change. So again, like last time, let's just prepare for whether or not Giannis sits. So first and foremost, this is a very appealing matchup for Giannis in general. And I'm actually curious, what are his points, rebounds, and assists at 47.5? So you can see how appealing of a matchup that is. I'm probably not touching that. To me, there's blowout risk and all that. So I don't know if I want to touch it. But let's look at the per 36 production with Giannis off the court. Dame Lillard averages 31.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, 8.4 assists, 2.2 steals, and 21.5 shot attempts. That's the big number. That's the number that I love. Now, last game, I do want to point out that he did get to the free throw line 16 times. That is something that is not going to be the norm. But at the same time, he was being more aggressive. And so it's not too crazy. His free throw per 36 number attempts is at 11.2. Averages 52.6 fantasy points per 36 with Giannis off the court. I bring that up because last game, I believe, was at 44, his fantasy score, or something like it was something low. So especially in this matchup, I would expect him to have a good game. Brook Lopez would be the next player to step up with Giannis off the court. Brook Lopez would get seemingly a good matchup, guys. Last year, Charlotte was the team to target bigs against, and it does seem to be slowly working its way back towards that right now as well. Looking at Brook Lopez, 18.9 points per 36, 7.3 rebounds, and that's a big one, guys. His rebounds go up by 2 with Giannis off the court, which makes sense to me. And he is going to get fed a little bit more in the paint as well. The issue with Brook Lopez, especially with Giannis, is that he's a great big to have because he can knock down some threes, but he does also clog the lane a little bit with Giannis. So when Giannis is off the court, that's actually kind of a good thing. That's why Brook steps up. His per 36 production is 41 fantasy points per 36. We saw that last game against Toronto. Averages 3.7 blocks. We're probably going to see that number come down, but he's just around the rim more So it does make sense why he gets an increase in production. And then Bobby Portis is next. Bobby Portis is very much hit or miss. In this matchup, I would expect him to have a good game. He still had 31 fantasy points in that game. He averages about 37.5 fantasy points with Giannis off the court, so still not a terrible option. And with Jay Crowder being out, you kind of expect him to have a decent role. And with Jay Crowder out, guys, Malik Beasley, and let's just look at that sample. So just with Crowder off the court, Malik Beasley gets the second most, actually tied with Brook Lopez for the most minutes, and Bobby Portis. So we do see Beasley play a little bit more. He is someone that averages 13 points per 36 with Crowder off the court, 5.2 rebounds, 1.7 assists. So overall, he's someone that will get a slight bump with Crowder off the court already. But then if Giannis is out, we'll probably see him get a few more shot attempts. So we're not getting any props for Charlotte just yet. I do want to take a quick peek at the injury news. Brandon Miller, currently a game time decision, in danger of missing. That kind of would, I guess, shade him more as being out. Now they are on front end of a back-to-back, so maybe one of them sits, one of them plays. Tough to really gauge, that whole situation. I do expect them to be cautious, though, with Gordon Hayward. So I probably would expect him more to sit. So let's prepare for that. So with Rozier and Hayward off the court, we can expect LaMelo Ball to have an insanely high usage rate. He does get a decent matchup going against Dame there. LaMelo Ball per 36 production with those two off the court, 37.5 for a usage rate. That's probably the highest I've seen, given a proper sample size thus far this season. 50 fantasy points per 36, 27 actual points per 36, so a big bump there. 24 shot attempts per 36, 9.8 assists, 1.8 steals, 6.3 rebounds. So all in all, he gets a massive bump with those two off the court and makes perfect sense. After that, we got PJ Washington getting a 28% usage rate. That is an 11% bump. LaMelo Ball's was a 12% bump. PJ Washington averages 13 more fantasy points per 36, though, with those two players off the court. Again, it makes sense. He did get up a lot more shot attempts, 21 shot attempts in that game. That's kind of been a little bit of what has been hindering his production, is not getting up as many shot attempts as I would have predicted at the start of the season. Now, he did shoot the basketball well from three-ball range. I don't think we can always bank on that, but he was kind of due for a good night shooting from three-ball range, because we look at it 1 for 5, 0 for 6, 0 for 5, like that would be something I don't think we can bank on again, but at the same time, he will get those shot attempts up. He averages 7.4 rebounds, 2.2 assists. The biggest appeal would be points. So let's go ahead and get into the next game. We got the Kings versus the Spurs, a 238 for the over and under. So kind of two high scoring games in a row. We're going to see it as an 8.4 for the spread. Now I'll take a peek at the injury report here. De'Aaron Fox has been back, and they have been playing better. De'Aaron Fox has been playing well as well. Devin Vassell is going to be out. Keldon Johnson currently a game time decision. Trey Jones, I think he's expected to miss, but he is currently a game time decision as well. Let's actually take a peek at that. Okay, Keldon Johnson more likely to play. We do see Branham in the starting lineup, which makes sense given the injury report. Now, the Spurs did do something weird last game. Champagne was someone that DFS-wise was extreme chalk, and it was kind of lucky because he had 4 steals and 3 blocks, and he also got a blowout run in that game. So like people ran out pretty well with that, but he is someone that could step up and start. That's why I'm bringing that up. Now we are getting some props here for the Spurs, and we actually are going to see Keldon Johnson at over 1.5 turnovers. That's an interesting one to me, because he is someone that, as the season progresses, I just see him having a bigger role. The Kings are kind of a scrappy defense, so it does make sense there. But we can see on the season 1 turnover, 3, 1. It seems like when he does turn over the ball, he's turned over a decent amount of times, 3 and 3. Probably not one I want to touch, though. I don't like those props. I don't like turnover-based props, steals and blocks, or just turnovers in general. I don't love those too much. We can see Zach Collins at 18.5 for points and assists is an okay prop that we have. For the under to hit, he's only projected to get 29 minutes in this game, which I don't know. That could be a little bit too thin. It really just depends on the game, but he still got 31 minutes in that last game. That was a blowout, so he does seem to be kind of locked in getting minutes. To me, I probably just want to stay away from that one. Wemby at 18.5 points. Again, a little bit too thin that we have there. All in all, the Spurs, it's a decently high scoring game. Someone like Jeremy Sohan would get a bump in his production if Trey Jones is out as well. And he is currently doubtful. So that's why we are getting some props. And so we just look at the production with those two players off the court, Vassell and then also Trey Jones. Sohan is someone that gets a 2.4 bump in usage. Now he's actually played a little bit worse. Again, that could just be matchup based. Does get 3.2 more shots up per 36, so something to be appealing there. Keldon Johnson gets this tiniest bump, but it's actually Branham that gets the biggest bump. All in all, these all feel a little bit too thin. All right, so for the Kings, this should be an easier matchup for them, given the matchup with the Spurs. I don't like De'Aaron Fox for over 2.5 turnovers. Again, I don't really love those props. If that's something you guys want to attack, you could. We are seeing Harrison Barnes for under 1.5 3-pointers made is seemingly a good one. I am a little bit interested in the rebounds and assists for Keegan Murray. Now, Keegan Murray has been someone thus far this season has let me down just as much as he's helped me. At the same time, good matchup. The issue that I think I have with Keegan Murray is that it seems like when he's bad, and when he's good in general. I was hoping we get to some sort of Fox points and stuff, but we're seeing that that's all pretty much a 50-50 split there. So no reason to like force those. So let's just move on into the next game. So the next game is going to be the Sixers versus the Hawks, a 1-point spread on average. 36 is the over and under. And so a very nice sweet spot for us has been Tobias Harris and DeAnthony Melton with Batum and Kelly Oubre off the court. I've gotten a bunch of people in the comments saying that they've been using those. Again, that's why I go over this. We don't always have those props available before lineup lock, but we can kind of gauge what would be a good line that we would want to attack. And I love the fact that people have been able to use that information and profit off of it. Now, we're probably not going to get that many props because we are waiting on news on Joel Embiid. If he sits, that's going to really help. Tobias Harris can really help Maxey as well. Now, when we look at the official report, it is basically a toss-up whether or not Joel Embiid will play. Now, he hasn't sat out thus far this season, I believe, so I'm kind of expecting him to play. And again, like Giannis, because of the injury news, the slate obviously shifts a lot if Embiid's inactive. We're not going to get any of their prop. And weird thing about Kelly Oubre is like he got into like an accident and somehow Team Z got his like Ring doorbell footage. He probably gave it to them, but like that was a little strange. Like you can see Oubre is kind of banged up right now. It could be a while for him. But we look at the production with those two off the court, Batum and Kelly Oubre. Again, we see Tyrese Maxey does step up into, I don't want to even say steps up. He actually has seen a slight decrease in his production with those two off the court, which I would say probably not the best sample, just given the fact that one of the games he dominated against the Pacers, we expected that. But it's no shock that since that game, he's had kind of two duds. Boston, a more difficult matchup. Indy, that's just natural. Like, again, going back to me with props, like coming in off of a bad day where that's kind of the outlier. Most people can tell that. Typically speaking, the next day is going to be a pretty good day. Or if not, then the next day after that's going to be a pretty good day. The exact same thing applies for basketball and reverse wise as well. So it does make sense that occurred with him. I think we're going to see a natural balancing out act for him in this game. Atlanta's not a matchup that we're too worried about there as well. But the biggest bumps then with Maxey struggling, Harris getting 20.6 points per 36 with those two off the court, 6.9 rebounds, 2.9 assists, been very productive thus far. And then you look at DeAnthony Melton, who, as expected, has seen a lot more minutes. Like I mentioned, the previous two slates that we had him on, the worry or the concern with Melton really as a prop bet for a while had been the fact that he wasn't closing out games. He wasn't getting that, extra run. Those 4 or 5 minutes really add up. And so now that he's getting that, I think we can kind of like him a decent amount prop-wise. Like per 36 with those two off the court, 15.4 points, 5 rebounds, 3.6 assists. And again, we can kind of bank on those assists or all that production being there because the per 36 production should be there. And then just kind of looking at his fantasy points per 36, 29 fantasy points per 36 with those two off the court. So pretty awesome stuff there. But we go ahead and move on into the next game. We got the Pistons versus the Cavaliers, almost a 9-point spread, maybe a game that we're staying away from. 220.5 is the over and under. Again, not the most appealing game that we have. We'll take a peek at the injuries that we have here. Jalen Duren's still out. Marvin Bagley is out. And that's really it in terms of significant injuries that we haven't seen or that we would care about thus far this season for the Pistons. Looking at the Cavs, Coro is out. Donovan Mitchell, a game time decision with a hamstring. And then Darius Garland, game time decision with a neck injury. That's huge. We're probably not going to get that many props for the Cavs. And I take a peek at the injury report. They are both projected in the starting lineup as it sits right now. We can kind of determine whether or not we think they're going to play based off of if we're getting props for them. And we are not. The only one that we're getting props for is going to be Evan Mobley. So real quickly, guys, I don't want to spend too much time on this because if one player sits, then it's tough to gauge. If another player sits, it's tough to gauge for sure. I'll just kind of give you guys a blanket statement here. If either of them sit, Donovan Mitchell or Garland sit, and I would say we're probably looking more like Garland could sit than Mitchell, I would assume. But if If either of those two sit, we're going to see Karis LeVert get a big bump in his production. We see that in the last game as well. Now he's a little bit hit or miss. He's very difficult to trust, but he is someone that would make a little bit of sense, I guess, in the game stack, where kind of eliminating a little bit of the risk, where you're more or less betting on the game staying close. And if it's not, the Cavs are, someone like LeVert would be the reason as to why they're winning. And then Max Strus would be someone that also gets a bump as well, especially with Okoro out. He's going to be someone that gets a bump regardless. So you can expect him to have a good game. I do want to call it last game. He played 37 minutes, only 1 for 7 from 3. His points were down a little bit. And I say that because with Garland out and with Okoro out, he should be someone that gets around like 15.6 points. Okay, so that is something to factor in to your decisions today. We are still seeing a little bit of a minutes limit for Jared Allen, but still getting around 30 minutes. To me, probably a little bit too thin, but not a terrible matchup going against Detroit. And then we look at Detroit. So if Bagley was to sit with Duren already out, James Wiseman would probably be the one that we would expect to get more run. This is a prop bet that I do like, though, because if Bagley sits, Stewart is going to get a lot more run, or we can just bank on him getting like 36, maybe even 38 minutes, assuming he stays out of foul trouble. And Isaiah Stewart lately has been playing better. Now, I didn't catch why he only had 19 minutes in that game. I have no idea. But I do want to call out kind of his three-pointers still. In 20 minutes, he went 1 for 5. Maybe he's just having a poor night shooting. I don't know. But he is someone that is getting 3 balls up. And so maybe that's something we can look at, because he has had a pretty good 3-ball percentage. Like if we get his threes at 1.5, maybe even with Bagley out, I think we can just accurately project him to get a bunch of minutes in this game. And I don't mind the rebounds at 7.5 as well. Like with just Duren off the court, Stewart is averaging 7.8. So seemingly we are getting a slight edge there. If he gets a little bit more run than his projected 27 minutes, you would expect him to have a good game. Bagley's out, that's just going to increase a little bit more as well. And so with Bagley off the court, I guess he actually only averages 7.6. That's interesting. That's definitely a smaller sample though. But I think this is a decent prop. Maybe we're forcing it a little bit. Thompson has been someone that's been playing well. We see his rebounds and assists at 12.5 with a 53% likelihood to hit. He is someone that we could just kind of depend on having a role already with Duren out. But if Bagley's out as well, we might just see Stewart at the 5 and then Thompson at the... So, maybe a little bit of a correlated stack if Bagley's out. Like they don't want to get Wiseman run. They just don't. Like, I think the max we'd see Wiseman get is maybe 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And so that's where we're going to see Stewart and Thompson get a lot more run. And that's a way in which you could bet with that. And so maybe we do Isaiah Stewart 1.5 threes. I like that bet. But to me, those are two that you can stack, hoping for the injuries to kind of go your way. The injury news, 215.5 over and under. We take a peek at the injury report. We do know that Markelle Fultz is going to be out. And we do know that Wendell Carter is going to be out. We have seen Banchero have a bigger role when Markelle Fultz is off the court. That's intriguing. But with Gary Harris back, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, and even Anthony Black all are a little bit too thin. We are going to see DeMar DeRozan a game-time decision, and then Alex Caruso a game-time decision as well. Now, we take a peek at the kind of projected starting lineup. We're going to see that Caruso expected to play, DeMar DeRozan truly a game-time decision. And one of the strange things about DeMar DeRozan being out in the last game is that no one really benefited from it. It was kind of strange. Like Zach LaVine is someone that definitely got bumped up, and I didn't really want to bet the unders for him because it felt a little bit risky, but that is what the data told us. So I'm interested to see if we get any lines there. Vucevic as well, actually was a little bit worse. Kobe White as well. So it's very strange. Like the one player that was projected to benefit and that actually did was Patrick Williams. Maybe that's something we can go back to. So let's take a peek at the props that we're getting here. And we're going to see we are getting some props for DeMar DeRozan. So they are expecting him to play. His over and under points is set at 20.5, seemingly a correct line to me. He's someone on the season does average about 21. I would say more times than not he's going to get the over. But all in all, kind of the props that we're getting for the Bulls do all seem to be a little bit too thin. So let's take a peek at the Magic. Another one with Banchero for under 4.5 assists. This is something that we saw last slate as well. He's probably going to get bumped. Not really worth mentioning. This is a low scoring game projection wise, and we can see that here. All in all, I don't know if I really want to attack any of these. We can see Suggs for under 3 point made at 1.5. So you peek at that. He's still getting the shot attempts up. The minutes aren't there as much with Gary Harris back. Yeah, I guess we could be looking at the under. All these do feel a little bit too thin. Goga had himself a pretty good game last game. He was someone that popped up fantasy score wise, and we are starting to get some fantasy score props. So hopefully by the time I end this video, we're going to get more, and I can give you guys those. But right now for the Magic, it does seem to be a little bit too thin. So again, moving on to the next game, we got the Nuggets versus the Pels. 5.3 for the spread, 225 for the average over and under. So we take a peek at the injuries here. We know that McCollum is still out. Okay, so that's going to mean probably Brandon Ingram, a little bit of a safe play. And then we do know that for Denver, Jamal Murray is still going to be out. Now, a lot of you know by now, I would hope that, we've been kind of crushing with Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon kind of for their overs because they weren't being properly valued with Jamal Murray off the court. Now, last game, that hurt us. I think it's went 4 for 5 now. And we look at the props that we're getting for those two specifically. I don't know if they've caught up enough per se. Now, don't get me wrong. In the last slate, they were kind of due to have, I didn't want to say a bad game. Aaron Gordon still played well. And in the last game against the Pelicans, he also played well as well. Worth noting that Jamal Murray was also out in that game. And so with Jamal Murray off the court, again, we do see someone like Aaron Gordon really step up and just be a productive player. His per 36 production, 16.4 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 4.9 assists per 36 with him off the court. So we did see what prop popping up as a decent one, 6.5 rebounds. And we can see lately 5, 8, 11, 11, 12, like all in all, this probably does have a good chance to even get to the per 36 number of 8.5. But again, we are seeing that the line's probably still a little bit too low for Aaron Gordon today as a whole. Now, like the last few slates, I think these are better individual sportsbook bets. Kind of what I mentioned with Kyle Lowry yesterday and it missed, unfortunately. That's kind of how I feel about these two again tonight, where Michael Porter Jr. over 27.5 points, rebounds, and assists, strangely higher than Aaron Gordon, who we can kind of accurately project to get minutes. I think those are both good bets again. But again, I think they're better individual bets. For Michael Porter Jr., let's take a peek at that as well. Now, Michael Porter Jr. against the Pels, the last time out, 22 points, 3 assists, 9 rebounds. So already, just with his rebounds and points, we saw that he had the over there. You look at his per 36 production, and again, he has been getting those minutes, which is great. He averages 20.7 points with Jamal Murray off the court, 7.7 rebounds, 1.6 assists. So again, it's just both those lines seem too low. It's weird. Now, I don't want to say that I think Vegas is wrong here. They're going to be correct in the long. There's something in their data that's telling them to bet the under, and I'm not going to doubt that. But it just feels strange that we are still getting those lines. And someone in the comments a couple of days ago was like, do you think PrizePicks leaves these numbers out there when these guys are consistently hitting their overs? And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like, there's something in the data that's saying this player is due to come down. Now, to me, I think that's because Jamal Murray is not there, and that's not being fully accounted for just yet. But maybe it's just Nikola Vucevic. They're just expecting him to really start to hinder the production for one or both of those players. But all in all, like, the worst way to bet is by looking at this screenshot right here. Or just like, if this mattered, and I'm not saying it doesn't, don't get me wrong, but there's so many more other variables that go into it, specifically for NBA as well, that this can be very recency bias. I call this line bias. So like, clearly they think there's some reason for that line to be at 20. But again, I think those are going to be two good individual bets again. Then we pull up the rest of the players here. We see KCP for under 9.5 points. That's kind of a strange one there as well. KCP's per 36 production with Jamal Murray off the court is about 13.7 points. Having projected to get 31 minutes. We can see last game only 9 points, a little bit concerning there, only 5 points. And then prior to that was getting a little bit more shot attempts up. So not a terrible one, probably a little bit too thin. If you want to run out some sort of weird parlay on a sports book with that, I'm fine with that. To me, on PrizePicks, where we want to chase the good percent likelihoods, I'm not touching that here. We go and take a peek at the Pelicans. We got Brandon Ingram for over rebounds and assists. Not terrible. We saw last game 9 and 7. The last game against Denver, only 2 and 5, so not perfect. He did have 22 points in that game. Is something that we can kind of rely on to get to around 22 points, I would say. What is his points prop at? 24.5. Yeah, it's probably correct. Zion, I don't want to touch. He's been a little bit too inconsistent. I do think J-Val's extremely interesting going against Vooch because he should be locked into around 25 minutes or so. Last time out against Denver, he did foul out, but he had 24 minutes in that game. So if he stays out of foul trouble, which is a big ask, but if he does, I think we're going to see him get more minutes because he just needs to going against Vooch. And he had 11 rebounds in that game still. And so we see his rebound stat at 8.5. To me, that's simply too low. But that's a bet on him not fouling out and him not getting to too significant of foul trouble and still getting minutes. I want to take a peek at his projected minutes. 27. So yeah, if he gets 27, I think he'll get over 8.5 rebounds. And that's going to be the first one that I really write down tonight is Val for over 8.5 rebounds. Now, again, I think that's a really good sportsbook bet. We have a weird kind of game stacking opportunity for a decent parlay on DraftKings or FanDuel, wherever you guys bet, because the payouts can be better because the percent likely that those hitting are not that great. All right, so now we take a peek at the next game here. We got the Lakers versus the Trailblazers. Only 8.5-point spread there for the Trailblazers. Kind of interesting there. We can see the line there for the game is going to be at 223.5. So interesting there. We take a peek at the injury report. Brogdon is listed out. Scoot is still listed out, and Simons is still listed out. So we know that there's going to be a heavy concentration for minutes. Looking at the injury report, no real shocks. I think we're going to see like LeBron be a game time decision every game this season, just so that if he does randomly want to take a day off, he can, and he won't get in trouble. The Lakers won't get in trouble. And so all in all, I do think this should be a decent spot for LeBron. I just don't know if I really want to go in on that like too much. I'm surprised that we're not getting Anthony Davis props, especially when we look at this. Like, he is more likely to play than LeBron, but I think they're both going to play. We look at the last game against Portland. Anthony Davis went off 30 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists. Now, that was a game in which LeBron sat, and maybe they choose to sit him again because all in all, they should be able to beat Portland regardless of if LeBron plays. And maybe, okay, I get it. That's why we're not getting any props for LeBron, because if he were to sit, then Anthony Davis becomes a lot more valuable as an asset. So, yeah, AD should be able to crush if LeBron plays or sits regardless. Heck, if LeBron plays, we might actually get some pretty good lines there on Anthony Davis. Last game, only 3 for 9 shooting. Didn't shoot the basketball that much. Had 5 turnovers. Had a bad game. And so I do expect him to have a better game in this one. We did see that we are getting some props for Cam Reddish. I will call it as to why. Obviously, with them being a little bit thin with their backups, he has been someone that has been getting more minutes in replace of Taurean Prince. Okay. But all in all, I would probably be favoring the unders there. Now, the game could potentially blow out, and he's someone that would still, I think, get blowout run. We'll take a peek at Portland here. So, yeah, Ayton is someone that's been getting some heavy minutes. We can see his points and assists at 13.5. That might be a little bit too low. Now, I believe that this was the exact bet that cost us the 6 slip bets on the 12th. It is. So 5 days ago, this was the exact bet that cost us a 6 slip bet. And so again, like I don't mind it at 13.5. Like, I think most games he does get the over. And I will say if LeBron sits, that probably does help him a little bit. You look at that game, 6 for 10, only 10 shot attempts. That's pretty low, especially right now with how many minutes he's playing. And so if that game stays close enough for long enough, I'm fine with that. Maybe a little bit too thin. We do see Skylar Mays is just someone that's been getting heavy minutes. And Jeremy Grant, let's take a peek at kind of all these guys. So Skylar Mays is beginning, pretty heavy minutes, regardless of if the game stays close or blows out. If it stays close, so we can project him to get 37 minutes. So with Portland, that's kind of the fun part, is if they can keep the game close, you can kind of bet on all of them to get their overs. If the game blows out, well, a lot of them are still going to be candidates to get minutes. But if the game's blown out, then obviously that's because a lot of those players aren't playing well. But Jeremy Grant is someone that is going out and shooting the basketball a bunch. He's been pretty consistent in terms of his points. I was actually curious, what is his points, rebounds, and assists at? 31.5. That's probably correct. 3-pointers made, under is favored. Again, probably correct, but we know he's going to shoot them, right? All in all, probably still a little bit too thin for this game. So yeah, as I'm going through this, it's weird. Like, we have better props on the 2-game slate than we do on this 10-game slate, but I do think that's just more PrizePicks not giving us a lot of lines simply because it is a bigger slate. Thus, they don't want to leave themselves too open to giving away, potential free squares, where on a 2-game slate, less news to deal with. They can put out proper line. We got about 2 games left here. Suns versus Jazz, 5.5-point spread. A pretty appealing game, 237.5 for the over and under. So appealing there. We do know that Beal, Booker, their game time decisions, I think we can expect them to play. Walker Kessler still out. And so the funny thing with the last game for the Suns is that Booker had his minutes limited. I was saying that was a good possibility. I ended up betting his under, I think, points, rebounds, and assists, and I think it was at 31, which was the correct move. But he ends up just crushing, getting 22 shot attempts up, and just frustrating in that regard. Now, we got to see if his minutes are going to be limited again. He only played 26 minutes in that game. I would say that's probably going to happen again. They have been limited Beal's minutes to around 30, though. So I don't know if there's like a difference in the injury. I mean, there's probably, some sort of health specialist saying, data says to only play 25 minutes off of this injury. Data says to only play 30 minutes for this injury. But all in all, with them now expected to play a lot, we are going to see Booker's unders be favorited once again. I'm actually curious, what is his points, rebounds, and assists at? Whoa, 39.5. That's high. That's really high for Booker. I might bet the under. Again, I think this is better bet him on the sports books, but if he's going to have his minutes limited at all in this game again, I think the under is the way to go. And it's just a way of potentially gaining an edge because the line would drastically shift. Now, you could just do under 2 points made or 3-pointers made at 2.5. That's fine. You could do also under assists. Like, all those should correlate well if his minutes are being limited. We do see Yusuf Nurk for under threes made at 0.5. That's okay, I guess. All in all, these all feel pretty good. I want to see Yusuf's projected minutes, though. 27. Okay, so only at 27, I can see why 24.5 we'd be favoring the under there. Very interesting, though, that basically all the props in this game we are favoring the under. If Booker sits, maybe you're looking at KD to get over, or sorry, if Booker is still limited, you might be looking at KD to get over 32.5 points and rebounds, or points and assists. And we did see last game, like, I think there's a decent correlation there. I'm not too worried about this game. It is a high scoring game. We like that, but I think there's an edge. We take a peek at Utah, and with Utah out, they have been a little bit easier to predict in terms of like Lauri Markkanen having good games, and then John Collins having good games as well. Now, overall, we're not getting that many good props. I do want to take a peek at John Collins at 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists, projected to get 30 minutes. And the reason I bring that up is because this should be a good matchup, and if he is getting, a decent amount of run in this game, and really, if this game is projected to stay close like Vegas is thinking, I can imagine he would get closer to 36 minutes with Walker Kessler out. Like, we really haven't seen them truly have a close game too much with Walker Kessler off the court thus far. And so, again, Vegas thinks this is going to be a high scoring game. If it is, obviously someone like John Collins probably is going to have a good game. And so I think we have a little bit of a game stack. We can bet Booker under, we can bet John Collins over, and then KD over as well for the props that I mentioned. Now, maybe Lauri Markkanen, I don't probably want to touch that. We see 8.5 rebounds. I probably don't want to touch that. To me, yeah, John Collins would be the bet. And now we take a peek at the last game. We got the Rockets versus the Clippers, 7.5 point spread, kind of low scoring game. Taking a peek at the injury report. Plumlee's still out. That's the biggest news here. All in all, unless there's like a major prop that's like clear discrepancy, I'm probably not touching. Let's take a peek at Kawhi's rebounds and assists, though. So Kawhi has been averaging 5.2 rebounds on the season. I don't know if this is like a matchup thing where we're seeing that the rebounds are being favored for over 5.5. I don't know. I feel like the Clippers are still just a stay away. Like, maybe Zubac is basically the only one. Points and rebounds at 18.5 here. The issue is that we are seeing his minutes pretty much be capped, but all in all, like, if he's playing 25 minutes, him getting close to 10 rebounds is pretty likely, and him getting close to 10 points is pretty likely. I'm not too worried about the matchup as well, so don't love it, don't hate it. That's kind of it. And then looking at Houston, yeah, we're getting a lot of underbets for Dylan Brooks. Jalen Green for over points, rebounds, and assists at 25.5, about a 52% likely to hit. Not all of these are a little bit too thin. Jalen Green is someone that is coming off of a poor night shooting. Again, you kind of expect him to have a better night shooting tonight then. A little bit too thin. So I want to give the data a little bit more time to give us the fantasy score props. So I'm going to show you guys some other props that we have available on the slate today in all sports. But first, we'll get into Underdog. So looking at Underdog, we are getting some pretty good EV bets there. By all means, if you want to run these out together, you can. This was a prop bet that got bumped on PrizePicks earlier at 20.5. That's a prop bet that I had already made. So hopefully that hits. But yeah, if you want to run that out, you can. Do want to take a peek at college basketball? We're getting a couple of good props there. And yeah, for college basketball, we're getting two pretty good prop bets for the over fantasy score. Vegas is liking the over a decent amount. I'm curious as to where or if we'll get underdog lines for these. So I want to point out that with Walker, we are seeing his points and rebounds and assists at 23.5. So even if he gets like one steal and no turnovers, we are gaining an edge there. Heck, if he gets one steal and one turnover, we are seemingly gaining an edge there, because if he gets a couple assists, couple rebounds, the point difference should be pretty good there. Then the other one we have is going to be a Michigan player. I didn't take a peek as to why he missed it in the last one. I'm kind of just blindly betting these ones, but we can see data-wise, the sportsbooks like the over a little bit more, specifically for this one where they would heavily favor the under at minus 140, whereas this one is just Vegas really likes Walker to get over 30 for fantasy score, so seemingly a pretty low line. And I like the fact that the projection data is also agreeing. And so touching on some NHL props, again, I want to remind everyone that this is a perfect example of why I have the slider in here. Like, these are heavily being favored as pushes, or to me, prop bets that we probably want to stay away from. The reason why these are popping up like this is because the unders are all being heavily favored, but that's at like 1. So it makes sense why PrizePicks would have the line set at 0.5. So those are all ones I don't want to touch. That is just measuring the difference. So that's why we use the slider to check out the best EV bets. And we can see Kyle Connor is a very good one. And then also Matthew as well. Those are two pretty good prop bets. So those are probably going to be two prop bets that I go ahead and actually toss in today, probably into a Flex Friday slip. I just like the fact that the projection data also agrees with it as well. And then we take a peek at some college football props that we're getting. We're seeing the under fantasy score on PrizePicks here is a decent one here for Lincoln Victor under fantasy score. If you want to roll with that, you can. Travis Hunter for under fantasy score at 14.5. PrizePicks is seemingly overvaluing him compared to everyone else, so that is kind of one that sticks out as well for fantasy score. Then a couple of other decent ones. Like if you want to roll with these, by all means, go for it. If not, okay. I'm just trying to give you guys the best options as it sits right now on the slate that we have. Let's see here. No real big discrepancies that I'm seeing that are worthwhile. So unfortunately, guys, we're getting very limited fantasy score props right now. I guess this is a plug for the 9 to 5 cheat sheet. If you guys want access to that, it is $10 a month. This is something I'll be updating with the fantasy score props as they come out. We can already see we're getting a couple in there. So let's just take a peek at those that we're getting. And we can see right now we have a decent edge in some of these prop bets. And so just got done doing the data refresh. Really the best prop bet that we have right now is going to be Julius Randle for over 42.5 for fantasy points. We can see that the sports books and some people, I've had some questions about, well, if the projection data is lower, why is it favoring the over? The projection data is kind of a separate tool for us to really gauge whether or not we agree with the lines and whatnot. Like here, for Paul George, for instance, we can see the rebounds and assists. Underdog has bumped it down to 9. The average sportsbook line is kind of favoring the under as well at 9.5, but the projection data likes at 10.5. So maybe that's not the best prop that we want to attack, So that's just a secondary data point for us to look. The average sportsbook line would have Julius Randle's line set at 42, but they would be favoring the over at about a 55%. And so that's why we're getting 54. And for what's worth with Randle, like this is an awesome matchup. You do expect him to be able to go off in this one. It's probably the best bet that we currently have. All right, so these are going to be kind of my favorite individual sportsbook bets. I did mention, you could run out a little bit of a game stack here for the Phoenix game. I'm fine with that. I do still think that the Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. props are too low, but again, those are going to be better bets on the sports books. And I feel like I've made this clear. Like I'll put these prop bets out on PrizePicks so that I can kind of gauge how they did and show you guys that. But really the goal with these, especially when they're favored for the under, is to go 50-50 or obviously 54%. But the goal is to just have a slight edge on these. Like these are not good EV bets. I just want to make that clear. Like it is a PrizePicks video, but it's also NBA props video as well. So just want to make that clear. So I do just want to call out with it being Flex Friday, we saw last slate there's a bunch of different payouts that people got for their Flex Friday or whatever different free money that people got. So I'm just showing you guys this as an example. What I want to do on Flex Friday, I think, and guys, I've never actually done a 3-slip bet, but like mathematically it makes sense to me. I'm looking it over. I don't see any rules against it. I would assume you can do a 3-slip Flex Friday slip. And the reason why I kind of want to do this, and obviously depending on the entries, whatever you get, like if it's $100, $50, $25, whatever they give you, if you hit 2, you're going to have profit. If you hit 3, you're going to have profit. If you miss, they're going to refund you. So it's very much risk-free. I believe. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comment section below. But I'm using the $5 as an example of what I want to do. Because again, I know my content's more for the everyday person, as is the brand. And so I want to set you guys up for the most likely profitable days. And so I don't want to recommend this if it's not possible, but I haven't seen it against the rules. I would assume it is. I've only ever ran out 5 and 6 slip bets on Flex Friday, but I think this is actually the smartest choice because you're getting a profit or you're getting your money back. And so again, that's why I'm doing the $5, whatever my Flex Friday money that they give me for today is. I'm going to bet the max there and do a slip like this if eligible. Again, never actually try this, which looking back on it, probably stupid that I haven't tried that. And just to be clear, like I wouldn't like doing a 3-slip flex is like the worst one that you can do on an actual night of betting. Like don't do that. It's such a terrible payout. Heck, any 3-slip bet on PrizePicks is not the way to go. You're better off doing that on Underdog. Okay. So right now, these are the 3 best bets that we have. I'm going to show you guys 3 other bets you could use as well. And so right now I would see these as the 6 best bets that we have. And I'm just showing you guys these because obviously lines will change and adjust throughout the day. If these bets are not there, you can then choose a different one. These NHL props, I think will get bumped. Same thing as the Harden one. And that's why I went with these 3. Now I did just see we got more fantasy score props. I'm going to refresh the data again, show you guys that. I'm not going to give another bet slip, I don't think, unless there's an easy one. And then I'm going to be getting out of it. And bada boom, bada bing, we are getting some better props. All right. So if you guys don't want to do the college basketball ones, that's fine. I guess. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just going to run these 3 out as well. So again, got to see if you can even do it. But I do like the idea of over for Keegan Murray. I mean, we can see that's a clear edge. Kevin Huerter then under 29. I would say that correlates a little bit. And then still Julius Randle. That's a good one. But that's it, guys. Like we show you guys the whole board, or I'll show you guys the whole board. Like we do just see those are the biggest edges that we have on the slate. So that's why I like to kind of concentrate on those a little bit more. So yeah, right now the best one, if you guys don't want to use the college football or college basketball props or college football as well, would be Murray over fantasy score, Huerter under fantasy score, and then Julius Randle over fantasy. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Let's have a good slate. Give a like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want access to that 9 to 5 Sports cheat sheet, it's available for just $10 a month. Great value for you guys. I priced it that way for you guys. Thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.